31-year-old Sarah Henshaw from Derbyshire, England, is enjoying a night out with a friend after finally breaking free from an abusive relationship.
Sarah is coming back to life. She's getting on with her life.
She'd come home and Darren was already there. He'd let himself in.
It triggered his sense of complete inadequacy, his sense of rejection.
He wanted Sarah to do what he wanted, and when she said no, he beat her up.
What should have been an enjoyable evening out becomes a fight for her life.
She says, anything happens to me, don't let them children go to him.
That was the night where we knew it was life or death. If she didn't get out, she was never going to.
Sarah would never have known that that was her last night out.
It's been over 6 months since Sarah Henshaw broke up with her ex-partner, Darren Hall.
Here she is having a nice meal out with her friend.
The pair are catching up as Sarah continues her recovery from an abusive relationship with Darren Hall.
The contrast in the way Sarah and Darren are feeling and the emotions that are driving them at this stage couldn't be more stark. We know that Sarah is coming back to life. She's left the relationship in the past. Meanwhile, Darren is submerged in fury and hostility and anger. Darren is becoming aware that she is genuinely moving away, moving on.
Sarah and her friend return to her home to find Darren Hall inside.
Darren was already there. He'd let himself in.
Using a key he hasn't given back. Darren is in her home. It must have been horrifying.
Her and her friend were like, get out, we don't want you here, please just go. And he just wasn't. He just was adamant that he wouldn't leave.
I think Darren was shocked when he saw a happy Sarah, a Sarah who crucially didn't need him. It will have triggered his sense of complete inadequacy, his sense of rejection.
She just wanted him to go, and he wouldn't go. This is my family, I'm not going nowhere. Her mate had to go home, and that was the last time a friend seen her.
Sarah Henshaw continues to remonstrate with Darren Hall, who refuses to leave. Sarah, who needs to get food for her children, heads out.
She's trying, in typical Sarah fashion, to manage and keep things under control with Darren.
The beginning of the end of this relationship began 6 months earlier. "31-year-old Sarah is excited by the possibility that she could be pregnant with her third child. She and Darren plan a romantic getaway, heading off to see their favorite group, N-Dubs, in concert. Before leaving, they arrange for Sarah's 2 daughters to stay with their grandmother.
This will have been a really big night for them, something that both of them had really built up their expectations for. They were both very excited. This huge concert surrounded by people. They've looked forward to this for so long. The emotional temperature will have been very high because of that.
Sarah is out with her longtime partner Darren Hall, a 35-year-old carpet fitter.
Darren will have realised that he had hit the jackpot when he had managed to secure a relationship with someone as vivacious, as intelligent, as attractive as Sarah was. This sense of imbalance actually set up the relationship, so he was always going to be feeling defensive because he felt that he was punching.
As the concert draws to a close, Sarah begins to feel exhausted and decides to head back to the hotel.
As the concert finishes, I think inevitably there might have been some kind of almost sense of disappointment.
They'd gone back to the hotel and Darren wanted to go out drinking. He wanted to carry the night on. And Sarah said, no, I've had enough. We think I might be pregnant. I don't want to go out getting bladdered. That's not what I want to do. He didn't like that.
His hostility comes to the surface. He starts to blame somebody else for what he's feeling, and that somebody is Sarah.
He wanted Sarah to do what he wanted, and when she said no, he beat her up.
We see him attacking Sarah.
He decided he was going to kick the living hell out of her.
But Sarah does one thing in the midst of this physical and emotional attack on her, and that's to reach out to her parents. She sends a text message to tell them what's happened. This provides some degree of safety because Darren knows that her parents know.
After the Manchester attack, Hall insists on a late-night 3-hour drive back to their hometown of Ilkeston. On the way, Sarah discreetly messages a friend who hurries to meet her at her mum's.
She ran to my mum's house in the middle of the night, crying her eyes out, banging on mum's door because she didn't know what to do. She didn't know if she was going to lose a baby. She didn't want her kids to see her like that. She didn't want to explain to her kids, oh, Daddy's hit Mummy, Daddy's done this.
Obviously, I was in bed because I was looking after the girls and they were in bed. And that's when she come in with all bruises on her. A friend was already there. She told her to take photos.
This attack was so severe that it will have destroyed any residual romantic feelings that Sarah may have still harboured for Darren. It meant the end of the relationship.
That night, it did something to my mum. It made her terrified.
She says, anything happens to me, don't let them children go to him. I said, don't be so silly. I'll be gone before you.
If I'm being completely honest, that was the night where we knew it was life or death. If she didn't get out, she was never going to.
Emerging from a night out in Manchester at an N-Dubs concert, 31-year-old Sarah Henshaw has been severely beaten by her boyfriend Darren Hall. Her mother urges her to go to the police, but Sarah, prioritising her 2 children perhaps, chooses not to take it further.
It wasn't long after the night of the N-Dubs concert where she was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This isn't right, this isn't fair, and I deserve better. And she just broke it off with him. He didn't like that she was setting boundaries. You can have the kids on your days, but don't come to my house if it's not your day with the kids.
She must have known deep down for a while this was not a healthy relationship, that she needed to end. Her emotionally ending it is also a very dangerous moment. This is when he has been totally rejected. It's when there's no longer the protection of the pretense of the romance between them to in any way curtail what he is capable of doing.
She'd done everything right. She'd said to him, I'm not happy. She gave him very clear boundaries of what he can and can't do involving her, and it just still wasn't good enough.
The eldest of 6 siblings, Sarah Henshaw grows up in a busy household. She takes on responsibilities from an early age. As an adult, she dedicates herself to caring for the elderly in Ilkeston, a job displaying compassion and support to those who need it most.
She made friends everywhere she went. If she saw someone struggling, she would help no matter what. She would open her home and her heart to anyone that was willing. She'd go to the shop and someone wouldn't be able to pay for the nappies or some food, and she'd pay for them. She'd help you and she'd expect nothing back. The amount of times I called her and said, I've got no food in. Right, come and raid my freezer. You know, she was just always giving. And that's why so many people loved her.
At 19, Sarah welcomes her first child, stepping into motherhood on her own as a single mum, relying on her mother and stepfather for support.
I was so excited. She was. We went out buying everything. She was the most wonderful and brilliant mum.
Very bubbly, fun, great with her kids, do anything for her kids. At first we were just friends, then when it come to helping her with things, then she started seeing me as a dad and starts calling me Pops or Dad. I've got no kids of my own. For someone to take me on as the dad and see me as a dad, that got me, yeah.
After years of being single, Sarah Henshaw meets Darren Hall, then a 27-year-old carpet fitter who lives locally.
She'd mentioned a few times that she was just seeing someone, but I didn't know it was serious until I went up to see her, and that's when I first met him. She can't really say anything when you first meet someone, but as I got to know him, I just thought there's something not right about him. He weren't really chatty, bubbly like me and Sarah. Sarah always goes for the loud, bubbly jokers, and like she was.
Sarah had been coping on her own as a single mum. She was the eldest child in the family. So she's somebody who her whole life had a lot of responsibility on her shoulders. To her, somebody like Darren Hall would have appeared very strong, very robust, exactly what she needed. To everybody else, that strength could clearly be seen as control and destructive.
I remember the first time I met him and he walked into my mum's front room with Sarah, and he just made me feel sick. He made my skin crawl. No one liked him, not a person, not the cats, not the dogs, not even the hamsters. That should have really been like big red flag number 1.
But Sarah is smitten.
She loved him, you know, it was one of them. She fell in love with him, so I just left her to it.
When you have a relationship that has this destructive theme to it, it doesn't mean that at the same time there's not also some kind of genuine bond. And I think that there was here.
I think to start off with, his personality appealed to her because, like with all narcissistic abusers, they start off as this Prince Charming who's gonna save her. I mean, she was a single mum, and he came in and was like, I'll look after you, I'll do you good. And it really didn't take long for those rose-coloured glasses to then switch.
In the months that follow, Sarah's family begins to pick up on warning signs. Subtle but unsettling clues that her new partner might not be who he seems.
I thought they got on at first, but then she confided in me, like, oh, he's saying this, he's saying that. You know, just sulky comments. And I said, you need to tell him straight. You don't need to be hearing horrible things about yourself. They definitely did think he was better than everyone else.
Sarah's family grows increasingly concerned, noticing how he isolates her, making it clear he wants her all to himself.
Quite often I'd go and look after her cats and clean a house for her, and Darren had an issue with that. He didn't like that I had a key. He didn't like that I could just see Sarah when I wanted. He was used to having her on a short leash, and from then on, we didn't see much of Sarah.
Sarah was able to interpret the possessiveness and the jealousy as an indication of his passion for her. And that's not an entirely invalid interpretation. The distinction comes where you get some indication of a hatred of the partner or the partner's family alongside the passion. That's where it's a warning sign.
You never sort of knew where you stood with him. 1 minute he's smiling and laughing with you, the next minute it's like someone's really, really twigged a nerve in him and you've got no idea what it is. And he won't say anything, he'll just give you the looks. That was when I was sort of like, nah, don't want to be around that, thanks.
Despite growing concerns about their troubled relationship, Sarah decides to move in with Darren Hall.
Darren has a real cunning instinct. He knows that Sarah's family are her stronghold. He knows that if he wants to have Sarah to himself, then he has to isolate her from all that emotional support that she clearly gets from her family.
Sarah's mother has doubts and takes action.
I thought, I'm going to move, I'm going to get closer. So we was all close, and that's when I really got to know him.
With her mother now nearby, Sarah finally confides in her, revealing the tangled emotions that make her relationship with Darren so difficult to walk away from.
She kept coming to me and just saying, I've had enough, but I want to be with him, I love him, and I've got a baby on the way.
Unaware at this stage that Sarah is pregnant, Darren had attacked her.
He pushed her or did something to her stomach, and she'd not felt a baby move, so I said, let's go and get a checkup. So she told the hospital that she'd banged into someone or fell. I wasn't happy, but they was living together by then.
The baby is unharmed. Despite the attack, Sarah decides to stay with Darren.
I think that Sarah was incredibly resilient, psychologically, emotionally. The sad thing is that that very resilience meant that she tried and tried in this relationship, even when he was treating her so badly.
A few months later, Sarah gives birth to a daughter. Darren Hall is the father.
She was so proud of her second daughter. She was a full-on mum, and she was so proud and excited. Things were looking up.
Darren Hall adores their newborn daughter, but his role as a stepfather leaves a lot to be desired.
When you look at how Darren treated his own biological daughter compared to the daughter from Sarah's previous relationship, he was two different people. His daughter had everything she wanted. If she wanted to go on a day out, the whole family was going on that day out. Whereas when it came to Sarah's other daughter, there was such a clear absence of love.
Having a child will have really cemented his sense of having made it in life. Not only does it support his sense of acceptability, but also the child will have accepted him in a way that he probably isn't used to being accepted by the world.
But Darren Hall puts all of that in jeopardy. Not long after the birth of their daughter, Sarah is shocked at a discovery.
She found out he had an affair, and that's when things were going really downhill.
He didn't get what he needed at home, so he went out elsewhere to get it. That broke Sarah inside.
Soon after, Sarah finds out that Darren has been cheating on her. Her family then notice a change in her.
As much as it hurt her and it broke her, it gave her a lot of strength. It lit a fire inside of her that said, no, why am I letting myself be treated like this? Why do I let my girls be around this person? It was like the light switch had finally turned on. This person is capable of a lot worse than what I thought he was, because he's hurting me this way, and I'm supposed to be the love of his life.
After 3 years, Sarah makes the difficult decision to walk away from her relationship with Darren Hall.
To everyone sort of locally, this is Granby Park. I can't come back here. It's too many memories for me. Sarah would bring us down here, you know, me and my siblings, along with her kids, and like we'd all just play together.
It's to the credit of both Sarah and Sarah's family, frankly, that even in the midst of all this emotional turmoil and trauma that we know she was going through, that she was able to still hold on to a bit of herself.
I remember we'd gone out for a family picnic and he wasn't there. And I've never seen Sarah's eyes sparkle so much. To this day, when I think of Sarah, that's the day I try and remember. That was the last day I can remember where she was truly happy. Sorry. Okay. She loved her family, and the best years of her life was when he didn't have control over that, and when she could just love us freely. She could share her children with us, and she shared memories with us. And that's what I choose to remember, because that's when he wasn't there to cloud her and cloud her judgment, and she was just Sarah.
For over 3 years, Sarah keeps her distance from Darren, resisting his repeated attempts to win her back. Yet, cutting him out of her life entirely proves hard.
Although Sarah has managed to extricate herself from this emotional trap that she's been in, she's struggling with 2 young children on her own, which means that she still needs some degree of support from Darren.
The fact that they had a little girl together means he always had a way to get his claws back into her. There was always a reason to talk to her. There was always a reason to need to see her. Even when they weren't in a relationship, he would use his daughter to create boundaries and restrictions that benefited him and did harm to Sarah.
Three years after walking away from Darren, Sarah is hit with heartbreaking news. Her beloved grandfather passes away. At her most vulnerable, Darren seizes the moment to reconnect.
As we got back to the wake, he was sat there, and I said to Sarah, "What's he doing here?"
She was vulnerable. She was at her weakest moment, and that was when he decided she's upset, she's vulnerable, she's lost her favourite person in the whole world. This is the right time.
He instinctively knows his moment because this family that's always been her source of strength, to some degree her source of protection from Darren, is injured, is damaged.
He'd check up on her. How are you and the girls doing? He'd act very concerned, like he genuinely cared. And he could slowly work on her every week or every day if he wanted to, and she wouldn't notice it because she's so overwhelmed with grief. What other way can you view a situation like this other than a predator and their prey?
Saying he'll do this for her, do that for her. Then she's actually saying to me in the car, I think he's changed it. He wants to help me with this, he wants to help me for that.
Sarah came round to mine not long after that and said, "Mum, I want to be with him, I love him, and I'm doing it for the girls." And I said, "You was doing so well on your own."
Sarah tells her mother that he's changed, that he loves her, that she loves him. Unfortunately, this rarely pans out.
I tolerated him, but then things started going downhill, and that's when it all happened.
Almost 4 years after Sarah left Darren, the couple get back together. They continue living in separate houses, but her family remains worried.
It really became obvious when he'd got her under his spell again completely, because she'd smile less. She just wasn't as happy.
Soon enough, Sarah will have begun to realise that actually things really hadn't changed.
She was saying things to me after about a month or two of being back with him. She's like, I don't think he has changed. He's done this and done that, bought me this and bought me that, but I think it's just to try and keep me here.
It wasn't until Sarah had dealt with some of her grief that she realised what was happening. That was when she started voicing it to us. You know, she'd tell us, "Mum, Megan, it makes my skin crawl. I don't want to be around him. I don't want to be near him, but the girls want to stay there. They want us to be a family." And she was almost sort of weighing up, does she let herself get hurt or does she break her kids' hearts?
Sarah's family grows increasingly concerned, fearing she has fallen back into an abusive relationship.
No matter what happens to her, she was always concentrating on the kids more than anything. As long as they were happy, she wasn't bothered that she was having all this trouble with him. She put up with it for the kids.
As a mum, you never want to keep your children away from the parents, and you never want to take away your child's innocence by explaining that their parent is a bad person, and I think that was his hold.
Concern grows as it emerges that Sarah hasn't been seen for 3 days, while Darren has continued the school run as if nothing is amiss.
Someone rang me up to say that Darren had been to the school to pick one of the daughters up, which they don't even know who Darren is. They don't know of him. That's when they contacted me to say that he'd been in and said that she'd gone missing.
They already had concerns from not seeing Sarah at pickups and drop-offs. So then, obviously, the school rang the police.
I went running up to her house because I was worried. A car was still there, that's a sign. Wherever she goes, a car goes. The police was changing the locks. They asked who I was because I weren't allowed in. And I said, I'm worried. I need to find her. I think he's done something to her. She's hurt somewhere.
A social worker arrives at Darren's home. Hall claims that Sarah needed a break and has gone to stay with a friend. Yet no one is able to reach her.
The police searched some of her friends' houses as well. No sign of her.
Three days since Sarah was last seen, police question her partner Darren Hall.
My name's Michelle Healy-Casey, and I was the prosecution barrister for the case against the defendant Darren Hall. Even when the police went and spoke to Darren, they said, what's happened? And he still maintained that she had simply left him and gone to her friends. He even said, she has mental health difficulties and she's done this before. However, they became suspicious because there'd been no activity for a number of days then on her mobile phone or on her bank accounts. So they arrested him. They then took his phone, and it was after analysis of his phone that they were able to show just exactly what had happened.
Phone records reveal that on the night Sarah vanished, Darren Hall left her two daughters alone at home. He drove 20 miles to a lay-by near Chesterfield, where for 9 minutes, his phone's torch lit up the darkness. Then he drove back. Police attend the area where Hall's phone was pinging for 9 minutes. They search the area and find Sarah's body.
Sorry. I was just shell-shocked.
We were all heartbroken.
The next minute, my grandkid come in and just said, my mum's never ever coming back, is she?
Sarah's body had been dumped in undergrowth, just a few meters from the lay-by.
When the police finally found Sarah's body, it had been left exposed for a number of days, and this was a very, very hot summer. What that meant was that, unfortunately, the body had already started to decompose. That was very difficult because it proved very difficult to find what the actual cause of death was. What we suspected was that Sarah had been strangled, but normally you'd be looking for particular evidence to show that. For example, ligature marks around the neck, or petechiae, which are more commonly known as pinpoint bruises that appear on the eyeballs or on the surface of the skin. And because of the number of days and the decomposition, unfortunately we didn't have any of that evidence to show just exactly how it was that Sarah had died.
Meanwhile, detectives speak to multiple witnesses, uncovering new details about the night that Sarah disappeared.
Arguing was heard by different people. One of the witnesses heard actual voices and arguing. Later on, another witness heard the sound of banging.
When a concerned neighbour texts Sarah to see if she's all right, she gets a reply, yes, all okay. Detectives believe that Sarah didn't send that final message. Her killer did. By now, Darren Hall is their prime suspect. Continuing to analyse data from his phone, investigators begin tracking his movements from the moment that Sarah vanished.
When the police looked at the home, they were able to see that a number of items were missing, including an overnight bag and a number of items of clothing.
He hatches a plan. He takes some of her clothes to a recycling centre in order that he can construct a story that Sarah has gone away for a few days.
He'd gone to a skip, which is one that he used for work, and he disposed of several items in the skip. The police were able to go to that, and when they searched it, they found Sarah's dressing gown and a dressing gown cord. So what he had actually done is he'd got rid of the items that Sarah had been wearing that night and put those into the skip, and then he'd gone and taken other items to make it look as if Sarah had run away from home.
When detectives confront Darren Hall with this new evidence, he refuses to talk. Just 8 days after Sarah Henshaw's disappearance, police charge Darren Hall with her murder.
Literally, the police came round and said it is a murder investigation. It was horrible.
Despite the weight of evidence against Darren Hall, prosecutors are worried they may not be able to secure a murder conviction.
One of the difficulties in this case was the pathology evidence. Because of the state of Sarah's body, we couldn't definitively say what the cause of death was. And there's always a concern when you've got that question mark hanging over pathology evidence, and you just don't know what the jury will make of that.
Nine years after Sarah Henshaw first dated Darren Hall, he stands trial for her murder.
I looked straight at him every day and I thought, you need to know what you've done and what you've done to all my family. I felt like I was in a bubble, like it wasn't real, like something you'd watch on TV.
In court, Darren Hall changes his story. Having initially told police that Sarah had gone missing, he now admits that he watched her die and dumped her body. But he claims her death was an accident.
During the trial, Darren was very emotional, and when it came to him giving evidence, it was punctuated frequently by him crying and his voice being very low and very soft, not ashamed of what he'd done, but like he couldn't believe that it had come to this. His defence was that he and Sarah had been arguing and that she had accidentally fallen down the stairs. Thereafter, he said that he had just panicked and therefore disposed of the body, but he maintained he'd played no part in her actual death.
The fact that he pled not guilty is just, it's laughable, really. If you've killed someone by accident, your first thought is, I'm going to call the police or an ambulance to see if they're even still alive. You wouldn't just dump them by the side of the road in their pyjamas for insects and animals to get at. I personally will never, ever get the image of maggots and bugs coming out of my sister's face. The fact that she was found with no eyes and her clothing was torn and half eaten.
He said that he had accidentally killed Sarah, but that thereafter he was panicking. It was important, therefore, for us to show that these weren't the actions of a man who was panicking. If anything, he was the complete opposite of that. He had thought very carefully about what he was going to do. The time frame at which we heard the screams and then the body was moved was several hours. That's clearly time for him to think about how he was going to dispose of the body and where he was going to dispose of the body.
After a 2-week trial, the prosecution makes a final plea to the jury.
This was the closing paragraph from my closing speech to the jury at the end of the trial. This was an unlawful assault. It was prolonged. It was not self-defence. And it continued, despite the screaming and the pleading. I do not know exactly how Sarah died. The one man who does has chosen to lie to you, and he couldn't look you in the eye, in the face of what he's done. She died during a violent assault at the hands of a man who was trying to seriously hurt her. And that is why this defendant is guilty of murder.
After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returns with a verdict. Guilty.
When he was found guilty, the overwhelming reaction was one of relief.
I jumped up in the air and went, yeah, me and my sister did. So we sat next to each other. But I wasn't so happy on the sentence because obviously life should mean life.
He stole my sister. And 17 years just isn't enough. We all have to live with this pain for the rest of our lives. So why shouldn't he live in pain for the rest of his life?
In court, Sarah's family finally heard the truth about her murder.
The fact that he just left her there and continued as if everything was normal, knowing that he's robbed us of any happiness we had left with her. That is the thing I really can't get my head around.
Monster. I'll never forgive him. He took part of me away. My heart is broken and it won't be repaired because one of my children have been took away. He deserves to rot.
I think it's disgusting, I think it's despicable, and I think it shows he is the true lowest of the low.
If anyone's out there suffering, don't. Go to family, go to the police. Just don't let this happen again. Sorry. I had to tell them two girls that Mum's never ever coming back. And that's the worst thing I've had to do in my life. And I don't want like anybody else to go through that, ever.
Being here, it's difficult because when Sarah was here, she was happy and smiley. It was just pure happiness. She got to watch her kids, do all the things they enjoyed to do. He stole that light that was inside of her. She had such a bright fire in her, and it's almost like he just kept putting drops of water on it until it went out. We won't ever get to experience Sarah sitting here and cackling at us for trying to fit in the baby swing or falling off of the roof, It's hard. I'll never be able to bring my son here because it will always feel like a piece is missing. Sorry, I just need a minute.
In 2023, Darren Hall was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend, Sarah Henshaw. She escaped their abusive relationship for a second time, breaking free from a cycle of control and violence. But months later, Sarah simply vanished. She was never seen alive again, condemned to her last night out.